Hey everyone, it's Arfan with Grow Automate Scale, and I am back with another expert interview. And I'm super excited about this one here. I have Jodie Solberg, and I've connected with Jodie a few years ago through a networking group, and I really, really love what she does. Her business is called Psyched Up Success, and she's a mental wellness professional, a success coach, a certified master hypnotherapist, transfer speaker, and give her a chance to talk more about that. But she really works with entrepreneurs. So this is something where a lot of times we come across mental wellness professionals who specialize in different areas, anxiety, OCD, all different kind of areas. But it's very rare I come across someone that does that in addition to working with entrepreneurs. And so I'm really excited to have Jodie here. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jodie.
Thanks, Arfan. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm excited to talk about this whole concept of creating that sustainable success mindset for all of us as entrepreneurs. Because, like you said, I specialize not only in things like trauma and anxiety and burnout and embracing neurodiversity, but I do it specifically for us busy professionals and
Hmm.
specifically for entrepreneurs, because I can definitely
Yes.
relate. I actually started my coaching and consulting business with other entrepreneurs way back when I was
Mm.
in grad school for psychology.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
so, had to pay off those six figures in student loans somehow and thought, being an entrepreneur and having that flexibility would be great. And so over the years, it's been something that's become a passion of mine to help other entrepreneurs, in this online space, especially nowadays, to be
Hmm.
able to create that work-life harmony and that really sustainable success. Because I know I've done it unsustainably and sustainably. And so I like to help others through that journey as well.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. And I want to correct myself. It's Dr. Jodie Solberg, right? I want to make sure I address
Yes.
your title appropriately because
You may just.
there's obviously a level of expertise that goes along with that. So I want to make sure everyone can fully grasp that we have a really, really awesome person here with us today. So I'm super happy. And so the entrepreneur dynamic is such that when it we hear a lot of mindset, right? And today,
Mhm.
She's gonna talk to us about cultivating a sustainable success mindset and, overcoming some of the things like those self-limiting beliefs and diving into the anxiety, burnout, all this different parts of
Mhm.
it. But we get mindset a lot. It just throws up a lot. So what do you say to that where someone's kind of feeling numb to the word mindset? That's like it's just
Mhm.
everywhere.
It's true. It is kind of overly used, I think, nowadays. And like you said, we just get used to hearing it and we just kind of blow it off and think, oh, it's just, mindset. It's not that important. I really need to just work on the strategies and the how-tos. And it's really incredible because when I talk to people like you, right, whose job is to help people grow and automate and scale, they will tell you that 90% of what people think are business problems generally are
Hmm.
more mindset and personal problems
I love that.
because
Thanks for
what
sharing that.
isn't that true? Yeah,
It's true.
it's
Yeah.
people think like if I just knew how to do this, everything would be smooth sailing. But really,
Hmm.
what mindset is about to me is how to get yourself to do the things you know you need to do in your business in order to grow and automate and scale.
Mm. I really love that because there's a saying that I really resonate with that all the answers are already inside, already within us. And
100%.
a
Yeah.
lot of times it's clouded, right, with so much
Mhm.
stuff. It's like it's how do you navigate a raging water
Yeah.
that's going on? And sometimes if we take a good look at our mindset, it could be like a raging water, especially we talk about abundance or anxiety or someone who's having levels of success. And I'll talk to burnout for a quick second because I was in a
Mhm.
position where um, my company, I was doing everything. I wasn't just running ads. I was building the funnels and I was having a lot of different clients coming on board. And I was doing about 70, 80 hours a week without taking breaks, 6, 7 days a week.
Mhm.
And burnout was like happening, but I wasn't in tune to it because it wasn't something
Yeah.
that was on my radar. So what ended up happening was when I took the I think correct, I forget the name of it, but there's one that gives you like your burnout score and things like I did it with my therapist a while ago.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I was like the level right below of like getting into like severe burnout.
Yeah.
And it was something that it felt like to me it just kind of crept up. Although if I sat back and looked at it, it was a slow burn over 2 years,
Mhm.
right? So I want to give you the floor to at least share with us, what you want to share about cultivating a sustainable success mindset. And I want to share my own story of burnout because I know when you talk about this, it's something that just having the awareness of it can make a big difference in someone's lives because they can start seeing the red flags, I believe. Because I know if I can go back and I know the red flags now, I'd have been able to say, hey, take a break, hire a team member, you know, like check, do a check and see, is this a path that I want to keep going? Is this sustainable for me? Is this good for my mental health? So I'm gonna turn the floor over to you, and I would love to hear what you have to share about cultivating a sustainable success mindset.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your burnout experience because I've definitely been through that myself as well. And as someone who helps other people with that, it's so important. You're right. Awareness is that first step. It's so important to see those things for what they are
Mm,
versus just overriding and blowing them off and making excuses and saying, oh, it'll be fine. I can catch up on sleep later, for
mm-hmm,
example. And yeah, same thing. I've definitely built, really successful on paper and financially, you know, years in business where I was completely burning myself out because I was doing the same thing as you. It was like, 6, 7 days a week, 70, 80 hours. And really just piling everything on. I actually, in my therapy career, I kept it separate from my coaching and consulting business for a
mm,
long time because I started when I was in grad school. And so those were two separate things for me for many
yeah.
years. And so it was just on top of each other. Whereas, when I decided that enough was enough and I wanted to get out of that cycle of burnout, I
Mm-hmm,
really wanted to work with the people who I love to work with, which were the people in my coaching and consulting business, all of us as entrepreneurs and business owners. I really wanted to work with those people who I really loved working with and who really wanted to do the work and
mm-hmm,
wanted to be there. Because in my therapy career for years, I worked with court appointed clients, people who had to be there.
mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. It's a lot of stress. And, my business was my happy place, but it also wasn't helping me to be piling two full-time jobs basically on top of each
Yeah.
other. And
Before we
so,
get too far, I want to
yeah, of
ask one quick question with something
course.
you said, right? So you mentioned the cycle of burnout.
Yes.
I've never heard that before. That's something
Mm,
new, and I just triggered my radar, like boop, 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 stop, pause. Let's take a
yeah.
second to talk about that. What does that mean exactly? The cycle of burnout. What is that?
So how I describe burnout is there are different levels, like you had spoken to, right? There's different
Mm-hmm.
um, levels and layers to burnout, where you're just starting and then things ramp up. But I also believe that there's a cycle to burnout where if you're like me, for example, I've been through burnout now that I can look back on it a few times. And what
Mm,
would happen is each time it would get so bad where I was in full blown burnout and I would say, okay, I know now that I need to rest, I need to recover, I need to take a break, I need to do something different. But then what happens is a lot of times people go right back into those old patterns and habits again.
mm,
And then it
yeah.
starts all over again.
Repeat the
And so you
cycle all again.
start, yeah, exactly. You start from the beginning. And then at first, you're not going back into those maybe 80-hour, 6, 7 day weeks. But
Mm,
over time, what would happen with me, for example, is I would just keep piling more and more on my plate. And I wasn't taking the breaks. I was thinking, oh, I'm healed, I'm strong, I'm good, I can do all the things again.
yeah.
And it was really setting myself up for another cycle of burnout. And there were years in between for me. So it wasn't, that I just went right from one experience with burnout
Mm-hmm.
into the next one. There would be 4 or 5 years in between. But what would happen is it was that slow burn where it would just kind of keep building and building until I was overriding so much. And I'll talk about this, about the symptoms that I'm referencing. I
Mm-hmm.
would override so much that then I wasn't really of use to anybody. And
Mm,
so, what I teach is how important it is to be able to become aware of what those signs of burnout are for you and to take care of yourself first. So then you can continue to show up for everyone and everything else at your best. And
Yes.
so to me at first, and I'd love to, interject, please, like at any
Yeah.
point with your experience as well. But, what I typically will identify when you're first starting to get burnout, I actually think of the first stage as before you're even burnt out. It's that excitement stage where you're all
Ah.
in and you're, you know, ready to work and you're doing all the things and you're passionate, right? A
Hmm.
lot of us as entrepreneurs
It's like the
are really
opposite
passionate.
effect of burnout.
The
The
opposite.
opposite low
Yeah.
of feeling is the high frequency of like, hey, I'm in
Yep.
high vibration. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm waking up
Mhm.
early. My alarm clock's not even
Yep.
going off. I'm getting in the office. I'm doing the things, and I feel pretty good. I feel pretty happy.
Yeah.
Um, I okay,
That's
I get that. Yeah.
that first step. And that's actually the best place if you are in that right now and you're listening to this. This is where it's key to put systems in place so that you don't burn out. And so
Mm-hmm.
that first stage is really just the excitement stage where you're
Mm-hmm.
all in your business. But then if we're not putting those systems in place and we are trying to just pile it on and do it all ourselves, then things start creeping in and it can be really small at first. You
Mm.
just maybe your body, usually that's the first thing your body is telling you something. Maybe you start getting sick a little more often and then you blame it on the
Mm.
kids. Oh, they're just bringing something home again. Or maybe are staying up at night and staying awake thinking about what you are working on, what project is at the forefront right now, or your to-do list. And so it's starting to affect your sleep and just
Mm.
in infringe on some of those personal areas. So maybe you're on your
Yeah.
phone a lot when you're with your family, doing work, and you're maybe,
Mm-hmm.
just starting to kind of let go of some of those healthier habits. And you're just not at your 100% best, but you're just like, oh, I've got it. I can handle it. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
tired. I'll catch up on sleep this weekend, or whatever the case may be. You get a headache, you say, oh, it's just allergies. It's
I
spring,
got you.
right?
So what I'm hearing is it can be very easy to ignore a subtle thing. It can be very
100%.
easy to ignore a headache, to ignore an allergy attack, to
Mhm.
ignore or put a blame on something else other than, wait a minute, your body's trying to tell you something. Your brain's like, hey, I'm an evolved brain with millions of years experience, and like
Mhm.
we recognize these things, and you're going down a path, and you gotta pause, you gotta take a moment to do something different. But we don't. We
We don't.
override, like you're saying. We just kind of like, okay,
Mhm.
no, it's okay. It's just the kids got, it's flu season, or
Yeah.
it's pollen season.
It's always an
It's
excuse.
it's
Yep.
always it's always something except like, hey, let me actually stop. And I wanted to say something. You were talking about in the phase of the beginning phase where it's like, hey, you're at this high. From my
Mhm.
experience, doing things for yourself, like self-care or things to prevent you from going into burnout at that early phase feels so good compared to
Yeah.
when it's at the burnout. Then it's like now trying to do it. It's just like
Yeah.
to me, it just kind of feels like it's more of like I have to mentally prepare myself to do this and to get into the
Mhm.
rhythm, to even feel it, to even feel the emotions of it, compared to when I'm at this peak state already and I go get a massage and I feel even better
Yeah.
and I can maintain that longer. So I just wanted
It
to inject
feels
my experience with
easy.
that.
Yeah, and it's very true that it feels so easy and in flow to do those things when you're at that higher peak, because
Hmm.
that's part of burnout is we start to feel more apathetic about things in general. We're losing some of that passion, we're losing some of that drive, we're losing
Hmm.
that momentum. We're not able to focus as much, or we're just not as effective. So you're not getting the results that you want
Hmm.
anymore, even though you're putting in that work. Because again, we're just not working at that peak. And so, yeah, if you can put the systems in place in that excitement phase, that's the best time to do it. Now, the next best time to do it is wherever you are right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I
But
agree with that, of
know
course.
that, yeah, it's kind of like going to the gym sometimes. If
Hmm.
you're in the groove and you've been going to the gym, you might be excited about going. But if it's been a long time,
Hmm.
then you might not feel like it till you're already there. And then you can
Hmm.
get some of those good hormones and endorphins and things going and
Yeah, it's a great
build
example.
it up. Yeah, it's very relatable, right? It's like, oh, nobody wants to go to the gym when
Yeah.
they haven't been for a while. But if you've been going,
Yes,
then you're motivated. So Yeah. So you're going to lose that motivation when you're going into burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to lose a lot of the motivation for a lot of things. And so with overriding, I want to speak to that a little bit with the
Yeah.
mindset piece, because we're actually conditioned from a very young age to ignore and override. And we have to
Mm.
retrain our minds and our bodies, that mind body connection. We need to rebuild that and reconnect, especially when we
Mm.
become entrepreneurs. I feel like that's key because all of a sudden we're on our own timetable and our own
Mm-hmm.
schedule a lot of the times. And what I mean by we're conditioned to disconnect is we go to school and we're told when we have to be there, when we
Mm.
can eat, when we can
Yes.
go to the restroom, when the
Mm-hmm.
bell rings, you can do this, until then you have to sit and wait. And,
Sit and wait.
we
Yep.
have to kind of fit into this schedule that's set out for us. And same thing when we, end up going and working for someone else. There's a time frame in which you get
Mm-hmm.
to do all of those things. And so instead of eating when we're hungry, drinking when we're thirsty, going to the restroom when we need to, getting up and stretching or going and taking a walk or getting some fresh air whenever your body is telling you, hi, I need this, then
Mm-hmm.
we are taught to shut it down and wait until someone else says we can do it.
Mm.
And so as entrepreneurs, then we're kind of left to our own devices. And what happens is we forgot how to pay attention. And so
Yeah.
we have to really be intentional about scheduling in the self care, like you were talking about,
Mm.
scheduling in
Yeah.
the personal time versus the business time, because we're creating our own structure and our own flow. And so it's really important to realize that if your default, like mine was to basically get so busy working, you forget to eat, that you're going to have to schedule in time to eat food and you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have snacks sitting on your desk and things like that, those types of systems and giving yourself breaks. That has
Mm-hmm.
been a game changer for me. That was one of the biggest things that I did when I shifted gears. Because when I started Psyched Up Success, which is my private practice now, several years ago, that was after that last big round of burnout. I was like, okay, I'm done. I started to see that cycle
Yeah.
repeating and it was no
Mm-hmm.
more. And so I made a big shift in my business and in how I worked. And I started giving myself longer breaks in between every single appointment. I built it into my calendar so no
Mm-hmm.
one can book me. I am not booking myself during that time. So I can literally do those check-ins. You mentioned that. And I love that.
Mm.
Check in with yourself. Be like, hey, how am I feeling? What's going on?
Yeah.
Pay attention to your body. Like, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Does my back hurt? I need to stretch from sitting
Yeah.
at my desk. Give yourself the time. And then you're not feeling so stressed, rushing from thing to thing and place to
Mm-hmm.
place and appointment to an appointment. And if somebody's late and then it puts you off your schedule, then you're not running late to everything the whole day. That was
Mm-hmm.
something that I recognized in myself from the past is it was always this pressure and this stress
Yeah. I go
from,
from next to
each
next to next
appointment,
to next.
the
Yep.
next and next and next. Exactly. And so
Yeah.
now, one of the things that I've done to recover and then prevent burnout in the future is simply to give myself more space and
Mm-hmm.
not put so much pressure and
Yeah.
expectation on ourselves to do all the things all by ourselves. And so
Mm.
things like delegating
Yeah.
and, hiring more things out and, doing the things that you enjoy doing and allowing someone else who's really good at it and enjoys it to do the things that you don't.
To do things like this. I'm really glad you mentioned, you brought up, you spoke about like how we override and the fact that it's
Mhm.
something that um I would probably say for the vast majority of us who've gone through any kind of schooling system, whether it's in the US or abroad, it's the same deal
Mhm.
where you stay here until a certain time, until it's time to eat, time to use the restroom, or the case is asking for permission to do things.
Yeah.
And those are very developmental ages, from typically school ages from 5 to, I mean, nowadays 30 years old, but
Mhm.
5 to 18 at least. And just being constantly, that's a lot of program that we have to consciously now reprogram in a way that's going to be beneficial for us and also see what's going to be great for us. And I love you mentioned also that you automated in your calendar that break in between clients.
Mhm.
So now it's not something that you have to even think about. It's automatically happening where there's a gap in between and you're not running back and forth. That's something that was actually pretty big for me too, because I was always my calendar was set up that someone could book an appointment. If I had a 1:30, someone could also book a 2. And
Mm.
I
Mhm.
it was a while ago and I didn't even think about it, but it makes a lot of sense now. It actually feels pretty good. I have a gap. No, you cannot book within 30 minutes after a call is over. And I'm thinking I'm actually going to increase that because I feel like I probably need a little more time to even give my best
Mhm.
for an interview or for a sales call or for an appointment or for a strategy call with a client. Especially like some of the work that we do as entrepreneurs, as an advertising company, we're spending millions of dollars a year on advertising. So there is a need, and I find that our best campaigns perform really great when I'm also, and me, my entire team are at a really great just feeling energy wise really great in
Mhm.
in our minds, in our bodies, physically and mentally. The results are pretty awesome. We implemented something in our company called the mental health stipend, and it's something that we do where every quarter we give something to our team, say, hey, take a moment to do something for yourself, whether that's plan something, take a massage or something like that. We just want to recognize that you do consistent work and to take that time and break because it's been so beneficial and important to us. I feel like it's something that not a lot of people have awareness of, and is part of this kind of part of the mission for me now to spread awareness to this too. So and we do that in our company. So um, no, I really love that you brought that up for sure. Um, I wanted to ask you, right, because you also mentioned part of cultivating a sustainable success mindset has a lot to do with limiting beliefs, like things like
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, the burnout, of course, and anxiety. How do they play a role together? Like someone that's going through, like, they're at this phase, like they're really looking at, hey, I want to be super successful. I want to have this, I want to have a successful mindset. I want to have an 8-figure mindset, a 7-figure mindset,
Mhm.
whatever type of mindset goal that they have, but they're also dealing with anxiety. And imposter syndrome can come out of nowhere. You wake up one day, you open up Facebook, and all of a sudden you get slapped in the face with imposter syndrome because you see someone that
Mhm.
started 2 years later than you and they seemingly have this more success than you. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what am I doing wrong or something like that? How does this all work synergistically when we're talking about cultivating a sustainable success mindset? Like, where do we even begin here?
Well, they definitely do all interplay with each other. Like I said, everything's much more interconnected than we give it credit for. So when we were talking about burnout, right, with having the physical symptoms as well as the mental and emotional symptoms, because 85% of any kind of health condition, physical health condition, has a psychological component to it. And so if
Mm,
you
hmm.
have, like I said, anxiety and burnout, stress, all of these things affect us physically. And then, of course,
Hmm.
then we get more anxiety about those things. And so when people talk about, oh, I get stressed out, my shoulders are up in my ears, or you hear someone say, oh, they were such a worrier, they gave themselves an ulcer, things like that. That's because everything's really interconnected. And so, in taking care of
Yeah.
ourselves in one area, it's going to support all of the other areas. And so definitely becoming aware of where those signs and symptoms live for you
Hmm.
and what are those things that come up for you.
When
And
you
then,
when you were no, I'm so sorry
no,
to
it's
cut you
okay.
off there, but when you
Yeah.
were saying that, what came to mind is something that's very common that I hear where people
Mhm.
say, "Hey, this situation is really eating at me. It's
Yes.
really tearing me
Yeah.
down." Right? We hear these
Tear me
terminologies,
up inside.
and
Hmm.
it's really like I'm just really like it's just like actual physical manifestations of a
Yeah.
stress is happening, and it's something that can also be easily overlooked. So I'm really happy we're having this conversation and bringing some awareness. I didn't want to cut you off there, but I wanted to interject there, so please continue.
Yeah, no, that was great because that's so true that people will say those things all the time, and then we still don't quite realize how connected all
Hmm.
of those are. And so, those check-ins that we talked about, I call those somatic check-ins, basically. So
Mm.
you're wanting to identify, and this is good to do daily, you could just have a moment where you literally breathe. Most of us run around basically holding our breaths all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so take a few just mindful breaths, just pay attention, stay in the moment for just less than 5 minutes, and just check in and say, how am I feeling? So emotionally, I am
Mm-hmm.
feeling. So not I am irritated, frustrated, content, whatever the feeling is,
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling, because it's not who you are. It's not your identity. It's just in
Mm-hmm.
the moment. So when I hear people say, like, you know, I am, anxious, or I have anxiety, it's like they're owning that. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
unchangeable and it's just who they are. And
Mm,
so one of the
identity,
first
yeah.
things I would say is shift your wording, reframe some of your wording a little bit to, in this moment, I'm feeling anxious. And so just being aware of and acknowledging it. And then where are you experiencing what in your body? What are you feeling? And then take a few more breaths and just give yourself whatever you need in that moment to shift that. If you open Facebook and, like you said, you see that person who, first of all, is a completely different person with a completely different set of strengths and skills and
Yes.
personality and life
Yes.
circumstances and all of those
Everything.
things.
So
But
many
in that
factors,
moment,
yeah.
it kind of slaps you in the face. Take a moment to breathe and check in. How are you feeling about that? What's going on for
Mm-hmm.
you? And then you can choose then how to respond versus react. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge tip that I have for everyone is by breathing and stopping and checking in with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then decide, how are you going to respond to this? And it could be, like I said, negative self-talk, those limiting beliefs rearing up, because what happens is our beliefs create our self-talk, it creates those thoughts, which then affect our emotions, which then are going to alter whatever action we're going to take. And so if we can slow down that process, because your emotional center of your brain moves 4 times faster than your thinking, logical part of your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
so slowing down by checking in and just naming what that is, a lot of times will alleviate it. And then
Mm-hmm.
really adopting from there more of a growth mindset. So if you're going to reframe some of those negative thoughts that are coming up,
Okay.
growth minded is the way to go. And what I mean by that specifically is if you're telling yourself in response to whatever is going on out there, you're just reacting and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm horrible at this and I can't do that. Then shift those things to like learning,
Mm-hmm.
growing, becoming better at delegating. Delegating is
Mm-hmm.
always a good one, right?
Delegate is a
It's a
great one. Love that one.
that's a great one. Yeah, that's a great one because you do not have to be great at everything all
Mm-hmm.
of the time and do it all by yourself. And so reminding yourself that, you know what, you can figure it out. You're still learning, you're growing your business.
Mm-hmm.
You're, can get better and better at that every day. Everything's that learning experience and that opportunity to grow and become better at that. And or you can also find someone else who's really great at that to be on your team. Because
Yes.
the other thing that I think is really key with that mindset piece when we're talking imposter syndrome or things that we tend to get anxious about in business or fearful of is a lot of times I feel like we're comparing other people's strengths to maybe
Mm-hmm.
things that aren't in our wheelhouse. And
Mm-hmm.
so, really embracing your own strengths is key. So,
Mm-hmm.
really looking at what am I great at and focusing on that and focusing on building that and
Mm-hmm.
growing in that versus trying to bring up these perceived weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you hire. That's where you collaborate. That's where you
Mm-hmm.
find other people who are going to
I
lift you
love
up and
that.
compliment you versus just beating yourself up constantly
Yes.
about all these things
That
that aren't who you are.
Yeah, the environment and the people you have around you is super important because it
Yeah.
can really play a big role. Um, that you mentioned so much there that it's just so incredible because it's something that it's like these little subtle things that can happen because like the example of like the imposter syndrome, as
Mhm.
that for example, like something like that, right? So for example, in my own experience, I experienced that where there's someone that I followed for a while and looked like, man, their agency is just crushing it. They're doing so amazing and things like that. I joined the coaching program and they were in the coaching program. I was like, oh wow. Come to find out, their back end was a wreck. Like they would have traded everything they had to have our backhand because of how
Mm-hmm.
I was. And I was like, wow, my front end isn't as great as theirs, or at least seemingly so, but my backhand is A class. Like, wow. And it's like sometimes our imposter syndrome is so fake. It's not even
It is.
real. It's just it's literally that fear, that false evidence appearing real. It's like something else that we don't really see the full picture of it to know. And it's just like we're our minds start going that way. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something really to take a step back and to breathe. And when you mentioned about the breathing, you mentioned 5 minutes. I want everyone not to like, to take anything away, like definitely take this one thing away too, because something you could do multiple times a day in between stuff. And it's a 5 minute
Yeah.
just being intentional about it. And I'll share my practice. And if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
please you can
Love
share.
that.
So my practice is top to bottom. And I
Mm-hmm.
will sit or stand. Usually I'll have like I like being a center by a window and I'll do my breath. And throughout this whole interview, I've been doing box breathing the whole time here. But I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
box breathing. Box breathing is a simple, you breathe for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe for 4 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
hold for 4 seconds. You repeat that process and it worked really great for just calming the nerves and keeping you. But nasal breathing, not mouth. I'm not gonna hold and breathe out. It's all nasal breathing out through the mouth. So I do that, and while doing that, I also do a check-in of go from top to bottom, like how am I feeling mentally? My thoughts right now, where they
Mm-hmm.
at? My ears, my mouth. Am I feeling like dry, tight, my jaw, my throat?
Yeah. Let that
Am I feeling
go.
like I'm not speaking myself? Like, am I just my throat closed, my chest? Am I feeling like just kind of like tighten the chest or my loose and my
Mm-hmm.
shoulders relaxed. So I go tip all the way to the bottom. And it never fails every single time I do this. I'll find some source of tension or something like that. If I take a moment to just think about it and just kind of sit with it, it always comes out to like, hey, I'm really just feeling a little bit of nervousness around something,
Mm-hmm.
be a client project or a busy week I'm going to have, or a trip I'm going to have, out of town, or just different things that come up that we don't realize. And it's a great practice that I do myself. Something I could probably do a lot more, but I know at least once a week or so I do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been beautiful for maybe about a year and a half or 2 years now. So I don't know if you have a suggestion or something, you give it like a quick tip of like, hey, do this and you start seeing some instant result. Not instant results, but you can start seeing some positive
Yeah.
results.
Well, that check-in, absolutely. You can see instant results on that in that you're going to gain more awareness and you're going to be able to shift because that whole idea is where you breathe. And so box breathing is great for that. So you can do a few of those box breaths, do that check-in, and you can do that body scan. You want to do that to see where, because at first you might not easily be able to pinpoint where
hmm
that tension or where that stress is. So yeah, absolutely scan your body down and figure out where is that living, what's going on, and then just release with those last few breaths. Release whatever needs to be released, whatever needs to, be loosened, any tight muscles, any tension, any stress. And, in your mind, you can also imagine as you're breathing in through your nose, all that good oxygen and air
mm
coming in and flowing through
hmm
you and then breathing out. So you've got the 4, 4, and then 4. So you can gather up any tension, tightness, or stress that you may have, and then release it on those
mm.
exhale 4, right? So in
That's awesome.
for 4, out. Yeah. And then you're just being really intentional about releasing those things. And I do feel like people will get instant gratification from that because they're just going to feel better
hmm
and they're just going to know that, like, okay, I can give this to myself whenever I need it. And that's something that someone can do anywhere. You can do that in public. You can do that sitting in your office. Nobody's
Yes.
going to know.
No
It's
one's
just
got
an
to know.
internal process. And so, anytime if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, or you just need a break for a moment, that's something that's just a gift you can give. And I love that you, like you said, you're like, I do at least once a week. So consistency is good. You can do it more often if you need to. But I think as somebody's building a habit, try once a
hmm
day, set a timer and
hmm
just take a moment to breathe. And then as you build that habit, it will get easier to just recognize when you need to do it versus having to do it, all of the time, but it won't ever hurt. So I think that
Yeah.
that is a great combination of the two things that we were talking about that anyone that's listening can implement right away.
Yeah, I love that. You even allowed me to up level my own practice. So I'm gonna take some of
Yeah,
that.
next
If you're
level.
if, like listening right now, I want you guys to really think about what we just discussed and just that simple practice there alone, in combination to everything that we've talked about around burnout, how it starts happening, when it starts happening, to like look at the flags of it and realizing that it's something that builds up over time, and it's something that we we've had programming before to override this, and now we're really taking a step to be conscious to do an overriding of the override that we were
Yes.
always doing, right? So
Reprogram,
yeah,
repattern. Yeah.
right. So we're reprogramming, repatterning all these different things, and ultimately, what it's doing, this work that goes on in silent, um, often unseen, often that we have to be in charge of ourselves, unless you work with someone like Jodie or some
Mhm.
or any other professional. Um, it is what cultivates that success mindset, right? If I'm
Mhm.
understand that correctly, it's really it's something that is just the innate practice. It's not something where you go to sleep, you wake up, you read a book, and all of a sudden you have a success mindset. It's something that has to be developed over time. And
Mhm.
these are some of the simple practices that allow to develop it, including having a growth mindset, really being on top of like what's going on in our lives, and um, like really thinking about ourselves and not always putting ourselves last, but sometimes not in a selfish way, but thinking of ourselves first, knowing that, hey, if I'm at my best, I'm going to give my son my best, my daughter my best, my wife my best, my clients my best. And
Mhm.
as a result, what will happen, I've seen in my own life, is that in doing this and having done some of these things, and I think I can this it's a continuous thing. There's different levels of this, of course, but I've seen more success, more income, and more peace as a result of it. So
Absolutely.
I really value everything you share with us today. And I know this is just like a surface level, in my opinion, of how deep we can go. In addition to that, we're all individual people, right? And
Mhm.
Dr. Jody mentioned earlier that our emotional processing of our brain is 4 times faster than our thinking processing, correct?
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
And I know that's also different for everybody too. Like there are some folks that I've
Mhm.
come across who um, their thought pro it takes longer, and they may need to
Yeah.
sit with things for even longer than for a day or two. Like they might have to actually think about something
Mhm.
for a bit before they go. So just like it's just that whole concept of like know thyself, and really
Yeah.
coming to saying it's okay, like just love on it. Like if that's who you are, is perfect. That's exactly who you should be. And it's
Mhm.
okay. It's totally okay. There's no judgment. No, like you're supposed to be like this, or is this
No,
just
no
know who you
comparison.
are, and know like, hey, my self-care routine, or what I need to put myself into a place of getting my vibration high again, getting my energy high again,
Mhm.
takes this amount of time. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
It's totally okay. It's totally fine. If two of us go for a walk around my neighborhood and I finish in an hour, someone finishes in an hour and 20, doesn't matter. So what? Like we both did our walk. We both accomplished it. There's no race. There's no urgency. So I just really felt like I should say that, because there's sometimes a certain level of grace that we have to have over ourselves when doing any kind of work, and knowing that like it's if other people have judged us in the past, to even eliminate those judgments from us, because that's
Mhm.
not yours to hold on to anymore. And it's going to play a big role in just like when you look at like a year, 2 years later, and looking at like how your mindset have grown, some of these little things are like, wow, I can't believe I used to want to please everybody, and I never went to a movie, I never got a massage, I never did these things. And now it's like you're in a whole different space, and you can look at your business, your family, everything can be in a even in a greater alignment. Even if everything is going really great right now, it can even be continue and go even more beautiful. Um,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I just felt like to share that, because I know I've come across some individuals who um, auditory processing and different things are a little different, and they've gotten
Absolutely.
so much judgment in their entire life, um, like from being called stupid in school or being called slow and
Yeah.
dumb
They
to
didn't fit into that system of
Mhm.
learning.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so embracing, like you said, our strengths and our neurodiversity of how our brains work, getting to know
Yes.
ourselves, and like you said, having that grace and that self-acceptance and acknowledgement, and really working in our strengths and our skill sets. And at least energy management is as important, if not more important, honestly, than time management. Like
Mm,
you had mentioned,
that's big.
know yourself and know how you replenish that energy and how long that takes and what types of activities helps with that, and incorporate those types of things in. They said, however
Hmm.
you learn best, utilize that.
Hmm.
Set yourself up for that success for yourself. If not, kind of setting yourself up to try to fit into somebody else's box and then beating yourself up because that's not who you are.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're talking, this is entrepreneurial stuff here, and I hope everyone
Mhm.
can see the importance, because I feel that I neglected this for a while because I grew up in that same thing of like, you don't feel stuff, you don't think about stuff, you just keep going, you keep doing, you just do do do
Just
do do,
work
you
hard,
work, you
make
work
money.
work work
Yep.
work. Yeah, because in our family growing up, it was about surviving, and there's a lot about
Yeah.
that. So we come from that, and now it's like, okay, you can a whole different part of the world, whole different area. All these things are
Mhm.
different. So it's really taking that second to really look and just be aware of what's really going on. And I think it's super beautiful because we're talking about people here, we're talking about business, and we haven't talked about business at all, in a sense. We haven't really
In a
talked
way,
about
but in a way,
any.
everything we talked about was about
Exactly.
business.
Exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly what I was going to get to. It's like we haven't talked about it. We haven't talked about anything. We haven't dropped any of the acronyms you're used to hearing in the business world.
Hmm.
But everything that we're talking about right here, at the core, if you talk to very, very successful entrepreneurs, those who have been here for a while, I'm finding that I'm having this conversation a lot more than the
Yeah.
conversation of like, how do I maximize my lead generation? Or
Yeah.
how do I increase my close rate from 55% to 70%? Like those
Hmm.
conversations come up every once in a while, but this is the stuff that we talk about more. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like it's the deep stuff. Like, hey man, like I'm doing 70, 80 hours a week. Like, how are you making it work in your agency to where you still feel pretty good, you look energized,
Hmm.
um and we can have this conversation about like, hey, well, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Like, what are you doing to delegate, to have a system in place so that way you're not overwhelmed and just going from, like you mentioned, going from this, and this right off the bat. It's like that's the person who finishes the vacation and before their vacation's even over, they're already in work mode, right? It's like
Hmm.
they never got even a chance to really enjoy it because there's just so much of going from the like from this to the next to the next. And
Yeah.
a lot of these things can really help. So I love this. I'm pretty sure anyone listening wants to hear more, wants to kind of get more, because again, we're scratching the surface, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And there's so much more here. And not only that, right? Because if you love the conversation with Dr. Jody right now, you're like, hey, this is the person who I potentially want to work with. Guess what? You can't. It's not. There's no brick wall. There's no layer. There's opportunities available. Would you be able to share with us if someone wants to get in contact with you or have a conversation or learn more about what you do and how you could help them? What would be a great way to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, my website is the first stop to check out more about what I do, how I do it, the services that I offer, and that's psychedupsuccess.com.
Hmm.
And there's also a free resource there. Since we talk so much about burnout, go to the resources section on my website. And I actually created a Burnout to Bliss guidebook that I think
Oh, okay.
the listeners will be really interested in. So definitely go on the website. You can also book that 30-minute call with me.
Mm,
So we're going to make sure that you all have the link for that. You can also find that on the website as well. And we can explore some options about, what mental wellness looks like for you, what that sustainable success mindset looks like. What are some of those limiting beliefs or some of those blocks and barriers that are getting in your way
hmm.
to that success that you desire? So we can have that conversation. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, so you can find me on YouTube, you can find me on Instagram at Psyched Up Success. And you can also find me, same thing, Psyched Up Success on Facebook as well, or you can just search my name on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect there.
Awesome. So I'm gonna drop all those links in the description below. So definitely if the anything, just grab the guide on burnout because that's gonna definitely be helpful. We talked a lot about that, and if you've never experienced that before, um, I don't want you to. Right? No one does. Anyone who's experienced it, they'll tell you we don't want you to
No.
experience that. So if you're at a really great place, you're like, man, everything is going awesome. That's great. And now is a great time to also
Mhm.
be like, hey, let's keep things going awesome. And some the challenges will come, but like being on top of it and like really having a good plan in place, make those challenges can feel like almost like, oh, it's a minor challenge, even if it was a major challenge. So definitely grab, what's the name of the guide again, please? I forgot the
Burnout to Bliss
Burnout to
guidebook.
Bliss. Yeah. So download the Burnout to Bliss. And I'd urge you to definitely book a call and see if like if you're feeling like you're maybe at that point where you're coming off that upward trend and you're going down, you're looking like now is the time to really work with someone that could, work with a success coach. Someone that even has like Jordan has a very vast background in this and works with entrepreneurs, not just busy professionals, or like she has a good experience in this, understands what it's like for us coming out of the system that we that we were just kind of put in, and now having to, I think one of the biggest challenges as entrepreneurs is we're constantly trying to overwrite programming from what other people have told us of how to go about our career, how to go about doing things, and how about go about doing what we do to serve and to help and to earn income. um,
Hmm.
so it's a big thing. So it's really great to be able to work with someone that can help to ask the right questions and to give you the right guidance to be able to, first of all, look out for your best interest. And you have someone great right here. So definitely book that call. And I feel like we can have a longer conversation on this. I want to keep it short. I think we gave so much right now that anyone listening to this can really start applying some tactics and tools right
Hmm.
away. Whether it's just you implement adding a gap in your calendar. I don't know the exact term. I say gap, whatever. In the calendar, 30, 45 minutes in between calls. Being intentional about taking a break during the day. Go outside for a walk, get some sun. Breathing. If ever, most of us are walking around holding our breath. Think about that. Just think about a second, like, okay, when you're sitting there, how do you breathe? Are you breathing through your mouth? Is it nasal breathing? Are you taking deep breaths in, rejuvenating breaths? That's a great place to start too as well. It's been one of the biggest things for me to do because I caught myself, if I'm at the computer, I'm sitting like this, and I had my camera on one day recording myself work. And I looked at it, I was just kind of labored breathing, just taking short mouth breaths as I was working. And I started becoming conscious of close my mouth, deep breaths through my nose, and I've
Hmm.
started feeling so much better. And like it's like my gut health's better, my digestion is better. And I'm sure there's other factors, but I'm just my own experience with that, like it plays a huge role. So again, Doctor, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you. Is there any final words of wisdom or advice or any suggestion tools or resources that you'd like to end off our conversation with for everyone?
I think the thing I'd like to end off on is focus more on harmony versus balance because we put so much pressure and expectation on ourselves to have everything perfectly balanced all the time. Just create harmony
Mm,
and flow. Think of your life, your business, think of it like your favorite song. Think about all of those different instruments and the vocalist and the guitar, the piano, drums, whatever it is that goes into that. And think
yeah.
of each different piece of your life. Your business is one piece. And so think about your self-care and your family and the things you enjoy doing, activities. All of these are different players. And sometimes it gets to be a vocal solo and it gets to be all about you. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're working on a big project in your business. But the idea is that everything should flow together in a way that's
Mm,
pleasing to you. And so, cut out those comparisons, really figure out what's going to be the best mix and the best harmony that's going to work for you and your life. And just reach out if you need support. Just know that you don't have to do it alone. You need some help around mindset. You don't have to have big problems. A lot of times
mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs are like, but I don't have, this diagnosed thing, or I don't have these big problems. And nothing is too small. When you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about something that's really 90% of your success in business is around things like your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
it's worth it and you're worth it to get that support so that you can get to that next level.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Everyone, thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you, my special guest, Dr. Jodie Solberg, for joining us today, sharing some excellent wisdom, a topic that I find pretty dear to myself and has been very incremental in my own success. So Again, check out those resources in the description below. Other than that, thank you all for tuning in today, and I will catch you all in a later video. Have a great one, everyone. Bye bye.